Hi, I'm Batsa and I've been playing a lot of Pax Dei since it came out in early access. The Grace update is here and I'm back with a guide on it. What is Grace exactly? Well, the developers describe it as such. Grace is an ethereal currency central to player progression, rewards and social systems in Pax Dei. It symbolizes the divine's power, enabling you to perform miracles for yourself or those you care about. As of now, you can use Grace for gathering and profession buffs. Unfortunately, teleporting using Grace is not included in this update, so we still need to run to dungeons. This is disappointing, but let's see how the Grace works in this first iteration. You get 10 Grace for free every day when you log into the game. This doesn't accumulate, and if you haven't logged in for a few days, you will still get only 10 free Grace the next time you log into the game. You can buy more Grace for gold. Each 10 Grace will cost you more money than the previous 10. I made a table to show how much gold it costs to acquire Grace. As you can see, it starts very cheap, only 5 gold to buy the first, or second I guess, 10 Grace. But it doubles or almost doubles for each 10 successive Grace, and will go into the millions if you want to purchase more than 200 Grace. Luckily, you don't need to do that, as the Grace cost resets daily. On the EU servers, it seems to reset at 5 AM Central European Time. After the reset, you'll get another 10 free Grace when you log into the game, and the cost of buying the next 10 Grace will reset to 5 gold. I think it's a good idea to buy a bit of cheap Grace each day, even if you're not planning to spend it that same day. The first 30 to 40 Grace you can buy each day is cheap even for casual players, and for the richer players, like me, they can spend a bit more each day. You never know when you may need to spend a lot of it in a single day, and the Grace system will expand in the future, possibly without resetting the Grace amount you have, so there's no harm in holding this currency. Now that you know how to acquire Grace, how do you spend it? As I said, you can use Grace to get a crafting buff, which is called the Blessing. It gives you +1 for a profession level for 1 hour and it costs 10 Grace. The gathering buff is called a Minor Favor, it costs 20 Grace and also lasts for 1 hour. When you press the T key in game, it now opens the Grace menu. The Petra Mea spell, which teleports you to your home valley, summoning your dead body or body of a party member, are now a part of the Grace abilities. But they are free of charge, their function hasn't changed in the new patch. The crafting blessings and gathering favors are called after different saints. I guess they will be introduced with the lore update. Some of the blessings can affect more than one skill, and you can have multiple blessings at the same time, but you will never get more than +1 to a certain profession, they don't stack. Getting a blessing for one that you already have currently will refresh the duration to 1 hour, no stacking here as well, and no extending the buff to more than 1 hour. When using a blessing for a profession that is already maxed out to 40, it should raise it to 41. At least that's what Koloko, the community manager, wrote to me. When you get a +1 to a profession skill, it won't unlock recipes that unlock at that level. For example, a craft that unlocks at level 20 won't be unlocked when you are level 19 and use the blessing. It only affects the crafting success chance. Currently, if the blessing makes a craft trivial, meaning it's a 100% success chance, you will get the trivial amount of XP. But it was stated that it is not intended, it should still award the same amount of experience as the base skill level without the Grace bonus. So this will probably be fixed soon. When is it a good idea to use the profession blessings? Definitely when crafting expensive magic items, meaning those that use tattooed sigils or crimson runic leashes, that have a higher than 40 skill required for a guaranteed craft, or those with lower level requirement if you haven't reached that level yet. Using the blessing when making other higher than level 40 crafts, like some of the steel blacksmithing recipes, is also a good idea. And once the issue with the experience will be fixed, it would be also wise to use the buff when you plan to spend some time leveling up a profession. Let's move on now to the gathering buffs, or minor favors as they're called. Despite the name, they are not minor at all, and have quite a substantial effect. Let's start with the gathering buff. I haven't tested it that much, but the extra yield from the buff is between 25% and straight up doubling the gathering amount. From what I can tell, the buff will be stronger when gathering items that yield a low number of gatherables. For example, I got 1 to 4 raspberries from each click without the buff, and 1 to 2 additional ones with the buff. And for flax, I get 5 to 10 without the buff, and additional 2 to 3 with the buff. So it's a bit weaker in this case. The woodcutting buff gives a consistent 17 to 20% buff for the bigger trees. It can be a bit more for the smaller ones, but in a fir tree forest it's still better to log the big ones. I checked the big oak trees that yield the heartwood as well, and the bonus yield of the heartwood was similar to the sapwood one. The woodcutting bonus doesn't work with the sticks you pick up from the ground. That is a thing you get from the gathering buff apparently. And you don't get more resin with the buff, only more wood. Next up is the mining favor. As you can see, when mining nice, the bonus yield is not amazing, it just gives you a little more stone, but when I move to the metal nodes, tin, impure iron and copper, the bonus yield jumps up by a lot. It seems to be around double the normal amount. The buff doesn't apply to the amount of sand you get from the nodes, only for the ore amount, but it does apply to the stones you pick up from the ground. I've heard that the buff doesn't work with pure iron, so I went to check it out, and yes, it doesn't work with it. I don't know if it's a bug or working as intended. It does work with tier 2 iron though. Last one is the skinning buff. It is pretty strong. For example, when skinning deer stags, I always got 1 to 2 large T2 hides, even when the stag itself gave me only rough hides. Normal deer gave me either rough or tier 2 hides with a bonus. My main skinning level is 32, so I tried the buff on an out with no levels in skinning. Apparently, the buff doesn't take into account the skinning level, and I still got the same 1 to 2 tier 2 hides from the stags, even though I only got rough ones from the normal skinning. This seems to be a bit overpowered now. I gave feedback regarding it on the official Discord, so if it will be nerfed, you know who to blame. Overall, with the buff I went from under 3 large hides a minute to about 4.5, so it's more than a 50% increase. I lowered the prices of boiled and fine leather that I sell to 60 gold a stack, and it has been selling up well in the last day. Though it was going fine before that with 70 gold a stack. It's my main source of income from the market stalls these days. So when should you use the gathering miner favors? It's good to use them if you plan to spend all or most of the 1 hour duration of the buff to actually gather items. If you just want to spend 5 minutes gathering a bit of wood for charcoal, it's not worth spending the grace in my opinion. The mining buff is worth using if you plan to mine a lot of tier 2 iron and maybe impure iron as well. If the buff will include the pure iron in the future, obviously it will be useful to use the buff then. And for gathering and skinning, it's worth taking it if you plan to use the big portion of the buff time for the gathering. They are pretty strong buffs as they stand right now. Besides the Grace Edition, there were several other changes and bug fixes in the patch. Nothing too major though. A nice change was the addition of a couple of NPCs next to the loot pile so people can farm them. It took them some time to address this issue, but better late than never, I guess. Some of the icons are less colorful now, their saturation value has decreased. I assume it's a bug, many icons look too pale now, we'll see how it pans out. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. Overall, Grace is a nice addition, though I hoped we would get the teleportability in this patch. Hopefully this will come soon. I'm not sure if I will be making more Pax Dei videos in the immediate future. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, stay tuned. Anyway, you can check my other videos on this channel, like the ones popping on the screen now. Thanks for watching.